I've got 4 nighttime fragrances for you today. The later we go into the night, the bolder and richer the fragrance gets. All right, let's get started. So for my late afternoon pick, I've got Reef Pure Musk for you. While I wouldn't consider it a lighter fragrance, it's definitely the lightest on this list, still giving you some versatility if you wore this to work and then bringing you into the later night. You're getting a very delicate musk accord with a lot of osmanthus and some passion fruit. While I don't really get the passion fruit myself, it's more of a fruity nature that's just giving a refreshing feeling on the top. So I can't really pinpoint the actual note, and that's just the notes that are broken down on the official website of Reef. But that being said, it does give it a nice, refreshing take on a musk osmanthus fragrance. And it pairs really well with the osmanthus as it has the apricot leather qualities. So you do have this fruity, musky nature that comes off unisex and really can get you through many occasions, but I think this is perfect for our first spot in the later afternoon. Let's smell it real quick. I gotta say, the Reef presentation is really amazing. This is some of their newer bottle design, but even the OG bottles look really good. I'll put those on screen. I like the approach that Reef is taking to their fragrances. It's very simplistic luxury, but at an affordable price. I imagine in the Middle East, you can get these even more, more affordable than what I paid, but still I paid, sub 80 for sure for one bottle. A lot of fragrances that sell these in the US usually do offer free shipping over like $55 or so. I believe I got this from My Royal Musk is what the website was called, but there are definitely vendors out there that will ship to different countries. Yeah, this is such a nice uplifting fragrance, but I think you would catch the nose of a lot of people that you're around. I'm just amazed at the punchiness yet airiness it has at the same time. And as I mentioned, those notes, they all come together very well, other than the passion fruit being more of just a juicy fruit kind of accord versus being, pure passion fruit where you get the very intense sourness from a passion fruit. This is great at this spot as well because it's very long lasting, so it would definitely get you through the entire night if you just wanted to pick this one fragrance. All right, perfect. We got Lattafa Vintage Radio next. This is a cult classic from Lattafa. I see why it's very popular. I tried a sample of this before buying the entire bottle, and I gotta say I'm very impressed. I do still need to smell the Initio version of this Paragon, and I've seen Noel talk about how the opening is quite different. So there's got to be substantial differences for sure. But again, at this price point, probably sub 30 or mid 30 price point, you really can't go wrong. You get a really nice Palo Santo note with plum and I believe some clary sage or sage. This was the first fragrance that introduced me to Palo Santo as an accord. And yeah, it's very nice. It's an alternative to sandalwood, I would say, but it mixes very well with kind of a more dense fruit, or maybe a dense rose even could be a nice addition to that. And again, this isn't going to be an absolute replacer for the Initio version, but really if you're trying to get into this type of fragrance, this would be a good place to start. Again, going to last you at least 7 hours, and it's got a nice approach to fresh and a little bit more hearty. So this is perfect placement for a sunset fragrance essentially. I forgot to note that lavender is also in here too, and I think the plum with lavender is a nice addition. It almost makes the lavender come off more sweet than perhaps it actually is. Without that subtle lavender touch to the plum, I think the plum could maybe be oversaturated in the entire formula. So they really did a good job in terms of, Paragon being the original. And even the Lattafa version too, I think is well balanced. Again, this is going to be a compliment getter and very nose catching for sure. I think outside of niche perfumery, or if you're big into fragrance, not many people are going to recognize this kind of scent profile. Even though it is doing a fresh, sweet to woody nuance, I feel like the way it's done is not in the typical fashion. So I think this is perfect if you just want something affordable that's going to still stand out. It's a great way to get into a familiar profile, yet exploring new notes, new accords, and just getting your nose on new stuff essentially. And of course, a nighttime fragrance list would not be complete without Naxos from Xerjoff, and I put this in the category of just when the sun has set. While you have some richer notes in here like the blonde tobacco, I really do think the citruses and lavender, giving a traditional barbershop feel, balance out really well and don't make this a super rich fragrance, but still rich and unique enough to really push through any occasion you needed to. I love wearing this one to nice dinners, but honestly, you can dress it down too. I know some people feel like this can be a little bit polarizing in terms of where you would wear it, but if you truly enjoy this fragrance, just wear it wherever you'd like. I think you're gonna have a good time. You'll be surprised where you can pull this off. Again, let's get this on tester, and we'll talk about more of the actual breakdown. I think the citruses just really balance out this fragrance, and it seems like a lot of clones have a harder time getting the citrus nuance down in conjunction with the tobacco and honey. Now, some people do mention that the honey accord feels synthetic to them. I think that's really gonna depend on your nose. So again, I really suggest giving this a sample in either a mall or buying a sample online. I think it'll really do you a big favor in the long run. As it seems, most people enjoy the honey accord. For your latest nights, we have Guerlain L'Homme Ideal Extreme. You really can't go wrong with the combination that you're getting from this. Still that signature sweet almond as one of the main accords, a little bit of leather, pink pepper, plum as well, and tobacco really rounded out. While this is another plum fragrance, the culmination of those accords makes this feel more boozy, and I think that's perfect that's why I think it's perfect for the top of this list, where you want the most deep, rich fragrance. I'll get it on tester for you real quick and we can talk more about it. There's just so many good attributes to this fragrance. The opening with almond just comes off so nicely with more of a spice, I believe pink pepper. And then that signature almond just works very well with plum. The plum in this compared to Vintage Radio, I would say comes off more balanced. Comes off more like a compote or jam just because of the spices as well. Like it feels more as if it's a cooked plum or reduced, versus more of that forward-facing, in-your-face kind of plum that you get from Vintage Radio. I love seeing, a similar note or accord being used differently, and of course, the actual breakdown of the note in terms of its formulation could be very different as well. But it's just nice to see how unique. It's just nice to see all the different ways you can use an accord. Again, I think a lot of people are gonna likely say this is more of a formal event type of fragrance, but do what you will. I've worn it in casual settings as well, but of course, I do enjoy it in those more formal settings too. As you can see, we do have some overlap with the fragrances I've picked. Naxos has some tobacco, and Vintage Radio has that plum in comparison to L'Homme Ideal Extreme. That said, they are done very differently. The tobacco in L'Homme Ideal is going to be a lot richer. It's going to be a lot smokier and more of your traditional viewing of tobacco, versus Naxos again is that blonde tobacco, giving more of that leaf smell itself, which is really nice and works well in Naxos. However, I feel the type of tobacco used in Guerlain's fragrance makes sense for that fragrance too. So again, another accord used very differently, very different classification / type of tobacco. And again, I enjoy this list. They have some overlap, but they are done so differently. Theirs are easily going to get you through the entire night as well. No weak fragrances here. Very good projection on all of them. And then, in terms of this type of scent, a little more bold and rich in terms of all four. I think there's a little bit of something for everybody in here. So you can certainly let me know what you think about the list. Maybe what you would subtract and add, or, how you would just go about kind of reconstructing the list, if you will. Another approach to the list as well is different price points. Even on Naxos itself, I got a really good price just finding a tester bottle, but there are always other ways around it. You don't have to always go for a niche bottle. You can get something like Guerlain, which is not in the private line. This could run you from like 70 to 90 for the bigger bottle. Again, Reef, could be cheaper in different sections of the world, but for me, around 80. And then, you've got your Lattafa around $30 or so. So the list is kind of built in more ways than one. It's nice to represent different price points, different phases of late night fragrances, different phases of night fragrances, different phases of nighttime fragrances. Again, showcasing some of the same notes, but used differently and composed differently as well. Let me know what you think about the list. Feel free to share your opinions and, maybe some suggestions for other lists I could do. Sometimes I really like those. I really like the collective nature of a list versus just doing one bottle reviews. So I'm happy to continue that. Even though I don't have a ton of bottles per se, there's still so many ways to spin the list. I'm definitely up for the challenge if you guys want to see more of that content. Thanks again for stopping by. I'll see you in another one. And as always, enjoy your fragrances. I know I sure am. All right, peace out. I'll see you again.